Let me read to you a passage from the 20th chapter of St. Luke's Gospel, verses 27 to 40. It's the Gospel for Saturday of the 33rd week in Ordinary Time. St. Luke writes, "Some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection, came forward and put this question to Jesus, saying, 'Teacher, Moses wrote for us, if someone's brother dies leaving a wife but no child, his brother must take the wife and raise up descendants for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married a woman, but died childless. Then the second and the third married her, and likewise all the 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. Now at the resurrection, whose wife will that woman be? For all 7 had been married to her.' Jesus said to them, 'The children of this age marry and remarry, but those who are deemed worthy to attain to the coming age and to the resurrection of the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. They can no longer die, for they are like angels, and they are the children of God because they are the ones who will rise. That the dead will rise even Moses made known in the passage about the bush, when he called Lord, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And he is not God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive.' Some of the scribes said in reply, 'Teacher, you have answered well.' And they no longer dared to ask him anything." That's from Luke chapter 20, verse 27 to 40. What does it suggest to us? Well, when we think of it, what could be of greater importance than knowing something of the hereafter? In the history of human thought, the hereafter has been naturally shrouded in mystery. After all, what could man know of it, except what he could work out for himself on the basis of what he presently experiences, or on the basis of what has been revealed to him from above? But the testimony of human thought is immensely divided. Consider what Buddhism says of it. There is the great cycle of reincarnation, which human life is caught up in, and the oblivion of nirvana. Again, consider the hopeless vagueness of life beyond death in many indigenous religions. All up, were man to have no other light than that which he can attain by his own reason, or no other light than that provided him by the various religions of history, death would seem to be a sad end to the precious blessing of life. Any philosophical claim that death is pointless because of the darkness of death would carry with it a certain rationality. So, for this alone ought we be immensely grateful to God for his historical revelation. With this revelation, we are able to live our lives in the light of what we know will happen after life is over. It has been revealed that when life finishes, each individual soul goes to God the Creator to be personally judged on every act of personal choice. Whatever a man has freely thought, said, or done will be subject to this divine scrutiny. Then there will be either heaven or hell for that soul, preceded by a merciful purification, if necessary, for those saved. So the final thing facing every person after death will be the judgment of God, and the upshot of that will be either admission into his presence or banishment from it. Perhaps one could say that this revelation fits in with what our conscience vaguely intimates. Our conscience seems to intimate a future reckoning, which it instinctively fears. But the possession of a revelation from Christ is a tremendous blessing. It is a great light which ought to shape everything we do. We ought live, if we are to be in any way prudent, in the light of what will most surely come, the judgment of God determining our destiny. But more has been revealed about the afterlife than this. Inherent in the revelation that a divine judgment follows death is, of course, the revelation that we shall rise again. We read in the Gospels how there were schools of religious thought in Judaism that accepted a resurrection from the dead, and there were others that did not. Our gospel today shows two such opposite schools interacting with our Lord. The Sadducees challenged our Lord with a question that implied skepticism as to the resurrection, at least a resurrection in the body, and the scribes commended him for teaching that affirmed the resurrection. The nature of the resurrection, though, was absolutely obscure for those who accepted it. Our Lord clarifies and confirms that there is indeed a resurrection for judgment, but he goes further. In his teaching, which is brought to us by the church, our Lord reveals that there will be not only a resurrection of the spirit of man for judgment, bringing reward or condemnation, but there will also be a resurrection at the end of time of both body and soul. The whole man will eventually rise again for judgment. We shall be judged not only in our souls, but in our bodies too. We shall rise thus at the end of time to life or to death. We shall rise body and soul sharing in the risen life of Christ himself, as did Our Lady, or we shall rise body and soul for an eternal death. None of us can escape eternity in our whole person, and this eternity is meant by God to be a wonderful prospect of life in its fullness for the entire man. God wishes us to be with him forever in the fullness of our being. This full resurrection, more complete than that which occurs after we die, will come to pass at the end of time. It is preceded by the solemn judgment of God. We are so blessed to have a clear revelation about it because it enables us to live in the light of it day by day. We are not condemned to darkness in what matters most of all. What is it to have the light in matters which will come to nothing of themselves, such as temporal career and wealth and status, if in the matter of life after death, which is the destiny of us all, we are in the darkness? Let us accept with gratitude the revelation brought to us by Christ and mentioned by him in today's gospel passage, Luke chapter 20, verse 27 to 40, that we shall rise again. After death, we rise in our soul for our individual judgment by God. Then at the end of time, when Christ comes again to judge the living and the dead, we shall rise in our body and soul for our final judgment. All mankind will be thus judged. Then there will be unending life with God or unending death apart from him. Let us so live as to be found worthy of a place in the presence of our Father in heaven.